Hey guys, we got Colin Graham here from Ubisoft, and we're gonna ask him some questions. So, first of all, thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, it's no problem. It's really fun to be in Vienna. It's an incredible place.
So, tell us about your work at Ubisoft. What are you doing? And
Sure. I'm an animation director at Ubisoft and on Watch Dogs. I was one of the sort of original team members when we came with the concept, so I had worked on the project for about 5.5 years and been through all the design and the development on the project. I do a specialization now in motion capture, but I actually have a background in keyframe and actually hand-drawn Disney-style animations way back. But so I've kind of migrated away from that into the art of motion capture.
so, how did you use the motion capture in like Watch Dogs or?
We did. We at Ubisoft Montreal, we tend to focus on doing really realistic games. That's the kind of Assassin's Creed and Far Cry and Watch Dogs are all characters that look as much as we can like real people. And so to get that kind of animation with the time we have to work with, we need to use motion capture. We need to work with real actors and copy that animation, take that animation from the actors. It's a weird thing for an animator. You go from sort of constructing all of your scenes and your shots in your head and making it real to actually shooting it more like a film. But then, of course, you have to take all that animation and plug it into the game. So it's not an easy process to do, for sure. But it's the one that gives us the best results for the kind of game that we want to make. It's very expensive, but it's still the cheapest way to get realistic animation.
Okay. So before the motion capture, how did you do the animations, or what projects did you work on before Watch Dogs?
Well, so when I joined the team for it was originally called Nexus. And then it became Watch Dogs. When I joined that team, it was like 8 guys from Far Cry 2, and I was working on Naruto. So it was really, really different. Like just really crazy, super fast fight animation. Giant monsters and battle between a frog and a snake and a slug with ninjas on top. And then so I really went from one direction to another direction. But before Ubisoft has really been invested in motion capture for about the last 7 years, I guess, 8 years. And the commitment now is to, have that, we have our own motion capture studio available for us all the time. And it's really only serving Ubisoft Montreal because that's how much we're doing. So we've kind of moved our focus away from keyframe animation because we can do motion capture. We're able to do it. It's a big investment, and if we don't have the investment that we put into our own facility, it would be very expensive for us to fly to Los Angeles, for example, to shoot motion capture. So we have Ubisoft Montreal and Ubisoft Toronto, both full motion capture, and we're using both facilities now.
Okay. Yeah. So in the open world, you got pretty much NPCs.
Yeah.
Do you record them all in motion capture?
Yes.
Or?
Actually, it's a really efficient way doing the civilians and the NPCs. You have enemy, like the enemy combatants. That's one type of AI, and then you have civilians, which is a different type of AI. And for the civilians in Watch Dogs, there's more animation on that than on the player. Okay. All right, because we just need all this variety for the world. So how we do that is we focus on a lot of improvisation. We have actors that we explain the scenario we want, but the actors are trying to bring a realistic detail to it, a granular detail to it. So we come in and we say, for example, we want to shoot a couple of animations of people putting letters in a mailbox, because we have mailbox in the game. So we have to think, okay, well, how can we make sure that they're all different and they kind of tell a story? And in one case, we have an animation in the game where a guy walks at the mailbox and he looks at the letter and he kind of taps it and he hesitates. And he's thinking, should I mail this letter? And then he puts it in the box and kind of looks at it and then walks away. Okay, and in the player's mind, the player sees this, he's creating a story. Okay, is this guy doing something wrong? Is he mailing a letter to his ex-lover and saying, I haven't forgotten about you for all these years? Is he sending, anthrax to the governor? What is he doing? Some player actually follow this guy and try to figure out if he's up to something or not. And maybe he is, maybe he isn't, you don't know. But to be able to bring that kind of life to the world, you have to have a huge volume of animation, and motion capture is really, for us, the best way to get that realistic look and get it fast and get it into the game.
Okay, and how many people worked on the different stories from the NPCs? Because you got like the hacking with the messages, and
so there's we built a kind of a smart filter to generate automatically logical database. Like you don't want a garbage truck driver to make $100,000 a year and have a bachelor's of arts and he's driving a garbage truck. And you also have the right clothing kit on all the characters. So there's kind of like and there's an algorithm that's created to basically come up with the rules for who can have what and what districts they're in. We can obviously override that and create a specific entity or specific character, but most of the characters are just generated on the fly from a database. But the fun part came from coming up with some of the weird stuff in the database. I don't know if you found what the weirdest thing you found was, but there's a lot of people with really big psychological problems in our version of Chicago, if you can find them. And it's an interesting proposition for us, because what we're showing the player is you see a person and you see a small amount of information about this person, and then you decide, you judge the person. Okay, am I going to steal his money? Am I going to kill him? Some players see a certain profile and they just kill the player. Am I going to protect that person? Am I going to assume that person's a criminal, or am I assume that they're not a criminal? Is it an enemy? Do I feel this guy is not a real threat? Is he just the poor guy in the wrong place at the wrong time? And it causes players to make a subjective decision about what they will do. And that's a kind of an obscene idea, right? Because you can judge a person by one fact and you can make the wrong choice or the right choice, you don't know. But it's obscene. And that's what we're saying about the world of Watch Dogs, is that people are just derived down to points of data, and data doesn't know who you really are. It's kind of and who's watching you and what decision do they make based on your data. So it's kind of a connection to all of this, like perception of randomness, and who are we really to the eyes of those who are watching us as data.
So what did you learn from working on Watch Dogs? Anything new for your future projects? Or?
Yeah. Well, the game was in development for 5 years, so a lot of things evolved over the life cycle. We did a transition from the PS3 to PS4 and Xbox respectively. And what we saw, what we kind of learned from that was that the size and the scope and the scale and expectations of game is really going to explode as we go forward. And it's the same as what we saw in the past, but we kind of had to learn what it meant for us. Like on animation side, we cannot produce enough animation to fill the console anymore. All right, so we will work on more efficient ways to make more animation and better quality animation. For me as well too, just in terms of content, I'm looking now at a lot of what does big data mean for us, right? What are we in the cloud of data? What is Google doing? Google is a very interesting company. They're all about big data. And hacking culture too. I spent a lot of time watching the DEF CON talks that are all available on YouTube, and it's kind of opened up a whole world of possibilities for things that can be done digitally. Mostly, I'm aware of what my smartphone means and how I'm being tracked and analyzed. That's something that I learned a lot about working on Watch Dogs. Mm-hmm.
So how was the work with Ubisoft? Because you mentioned you worked on Naruto, and so how's the difference between the developers or the teams?
The teams, I've been at Ubisoft for almost about 10 years now, and when I started out, it was I mean, they've always had fairly big teams, and I was on Splinter Cell, which was a pretty big team. And then Naruto was a really small team that nobody really paid much attention to, right? So everybody's focused on Assassin's Creed and Far Cry 2, and it's like Naruto was this little animation-driven project on the side. But it was very short, and it was fun, and we kind of just did what we wanted and tried to make a game that the fans would like. And in that process, we became fans of Naruto as well, because I learned every line from every episode, every move. I used to be able to tell you exactly which move was in which fight was in which part of the series. And that was a really fun experience to do, because it was like 60, 70 people, and that's it. We're only depending on each other. Watch Dogs kind of started off the same way, and then it was a small team, and it sort of started to grow, and we sort of add people from Assassin's Creed and then Splinter Cell, and now it's become a big franchise. It's been, they've announced that it'll be a franchise, and it'll be managed like Assassin's Creed. So it's I've kind of grown up into the big projects now by doing Watch Dogs. It's been kind of a process for the project, but also a journey for me as well at the same time.
So in point of animation, what future projects do you looking for? Not only Ubisoft.
We have an interesting question to think about what we'll do in the future. For realistic style games, there's something we do adventure games, but I can really look at sports games, and I can say a lot of what we do is similar to a sports game, because we have a certain responsiveness and action type moves, and we're doing a lot of motion capture and rendering realistic human movement, but with a control that it has a response. So I could be looking at that, and that would give me some idea where we would go in terms of technology. Apart from that, there's a lot of research papers out there about procedural animation and motion fields and stuff like that. I think somewhere in the future, some game, maybe EA will do something with that. I don't know. Some people must be working on it. But right now, what we're more focused on is taking the way that we currently make games and try to figure out what's more efficient about it, right? How to figure out, when we went from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3, every time our team's doubled in size. But now we're going to go from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4. The team cannot afford to double in size. We didn't double the price of a game, right? But we doubled the amount of work that it takes to make one, and advertising as well too. So efficiency is definitely going to be our first focus. And then as we go into the console generation stabilizes, and everybody understands only how to work on the next level and becomes efficient, then you'll start to see new technology try to change and morph that. Technology usually evolves in a way to serve our needs. So if we look at where we are wasting time, where we have a bottleneck in manual labor that's not necessary, whatever the next innovations will be, we'll focus on that.
So one last question what was your personal hardest project to work on in point of animation? Took the most amount of time, or?
Well, Watch Dogs is definitely the most extensive. Everything you do in your career kind of prepares you for the next stage. So there are things that I was able to do in Watch Dogs I didn't know how to do before. We have a lot of successes. I had a lot of success in my career, but I've had a few failures as well too, and those are hard to learn from. But once you have those experiences, you really work hard to never be in that position again. So everybody usually only sees the positive point. Watch Dogs is a big deal, but I had some rough projects along the way too. Those were hard to deal with. I had to really immerse myself in a different way of thinking to do Watch Dogs. I almost had to relearn what motion capture was. But I was really lucky to work with a couple of guys at Ubisoft who originally built the motion builder software. Okay. Right? They're the architects of that software. So they were able to actually tell me, like, you're thinking about motion capture the wrong way. Like, you're thinking about this like a keyframe animator, and it's not. You've got to think about it in a different way. You've got to bend the data, and you've got to preserve the human motion, not destroy it, not just rip it apart and make some keyframes and do some animation, but actually preserve the data. And that was a big challenge to learn how to do, but I had the right people around me to coach me, to help me understand that.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the interview.